It was supposed to be my son's happiest day. The house was alive with the chaos of celebration. Bright balloons bobbing against the ceiling, colorful streamers hanging at awkward angles, and the smell of fresh cake filling every corner. Excited little voices ran through the rooms, laughter spilling from the mouths of children and adults alike. I felt that familiar warmth in my chest, the joy of seeing my son so animated, so thrilled, so innocent in his delight. But then I noticed my sister. She stood off to the side, a smirk curling at the edges of her lips, her eyes glinting in a way that immediately set off alarms in my mind. One by one, she moved toward the gifts, deliberately tearing into wrapping paper, crushing delicate boxes, and snapping toys. Guests noticed, then laughed, pointing, chuckling, whispering among themselves, treating it as a funny spectacle. My stomach sank. My son froze mid-step, his wide eyes filling with tears, his tiny hands clutching the shredded remains of what was meant to be his joy. I felt an intense rush of emotions, anger, disbelief, panic, all colliding in my chest. My mouth opened to shout, to intervene, to stop her, but my body locked in place. I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching in stunned horror. And then I saw him, my father. He had been sitting quietly, observing the chaos like a still, calm lake, but now he rose slowly from his chair. His face was unreadable, calm, but his eyes were sharp, piercing. Something in the way he moved, deliberate and silent, told me that this was far from over. A tension built, thick and electric, as the room held its collective breath. I had no idea what my father was planning, but I could feel that everything in this room was about to shift. And in that moment, I realized that nothing would ever feel the same again. My father's gaze locked on my sister, and I knew something was about to happen. I've always been fiercely protective of my son. From the moment he was born, I poured myself into every little detail of his life, his first steps, his first words, and every birthday that marked another year of joy and growth. I loved planning surprises for him, little celebrations that made his eyes light up and his laughter echo through the house. Those moments were sacred to me, a small reminder of what mattered most in life. My sister, though, she was different. She thrived on attention, always needing to be the center of any room she entered. Small events quickly became stages for her drama, and minor mishaps often turned into chaos when she was involved. Over the years, I had grown used to her unpredictability, but today was something else entirely. Her actions at my son's birthday weren't just childish, they were cruel. I felt a mix of embarrassment and anger coursing through me. This was supposed to be a celebration, a happy family gathering, yet she had made it all about herself, at the expense of my child. Everyone else seemed to find it funny, laughing along and whispering among themselves, but I couldn't understand how anyone could enjoy watching him hurt. I replayed memories of past incidents, moments where she had tried to outshine others or sabotage small joys. It wasn't isolated, it was a pattern, a habit that had now reached its peak on my son's special day. I knew something had to be done, something decisive to protect my child and restore order. Pause. But before I could even take a step forward, my father began moving toward us. The energy in the room shifted instantly. I could feel it in my chest, the tension so thick it was almost tangible. The air seemed charged, electric, as if something monumental was about to happen. The room fell into an almost eerie silence as my father began to move toward my sister, each step deliberate, measured, and almost heavy with purpose. I could see her smirk faltering, the confident air she had carried moments ago beginning to waver. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anticipation, fear, and anger all colliding at once. I didn't know if he was going to scold her, confront her calmly, or do something completely unexpected that would change everything. Guests shifted nervously, some exchanging uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene or wait and watch the unfolding moment. I looked down at my son. His tiny hands were still clutching the torn, crumpled remnants of his gifts. His eyes were wide and glistening with tears, and I felt a tight knot in my stomach. I knew I needed a plan, but survival in this moment meant staying calm, steady, and deliberate. Protecting my son's feelings was priority number one, but exposing my sister's cruelty without causing more chaos was just as critical. Every instinct screamed that this was a turning point, the moment when I could reclaim a sense of control. I scanned the room, noticing the subtle expressions, some faces filled with empathy and worry, some with amusement, others entirely indifferent. Each reaction reminded me that family dynamics were complicated, layered, and sometimes cruel, and today, I would have to navigate them carefully if I wanted to turn the situation around and defend my son's happiness. My father's hand rested lightly on my sister's shoulder, and I braced for what he would do next. Without saying a single word, my father reached out and gently, but firmly, removed my sister's hands from the broken gifts. She froze instantly, caught off guard, her smirk faltering as she realized someone had taken control of the situation. He held her gaze, calm but unyielding, as if silently measuring her reaction, weighing her intentions, and waiting for her next move. The room seemed to hold its breath. I could feel a surge of anger rising in me, hot and urgent, but I forced myself to observe, to stay composed. My sister attempted to laugh it off, trying to act casual, but it came out awkward, forced, brittle, and utterly unconvincing. Everyone in the room was watching now, not just her, but me, my father, and most importantly, my son. The laughter had vanished, replaced by a tense anticipation. I noticed the subtle tells, tightened jaws, shifting eyes, a flicker of hesitation, that revealed her guilt more clearly than words ever could. This escalation wasn't just about broken gifts, it was a test of control, of boundaries, of humiliation. My mind raced, considering strategies to protect my son while ensuring my sister faced accountability. The psychological tension in the room was thick, a silent battle of wills unfolding in real time. The weight of years, of patterns, of past incidents pressed down on me, making every second feel heavier than the last. The dynamics of our family, both fragile and complex, had shaped this moment, and I could feel history itself watching us, waiting for the next move. And then, my father spoke. His words were low, deliberate, and sharp, sending a chill down my spine. My father's words were precise, deliberate, and carried a weight that immediately shifted the energy in the room. "Actions have consequences," he said, his voice calm but cutting through the tension like a knife, "not just for you, but for those around you." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. My sister's confident smirk vanished completely, replaced by a mix of confusion, defensiveness, and a flicker of panic. Guests whispered quietly among themselves, unsure whether they should intervene, comment, or simply watch the unfolding drama. I felt my son peek out from behind me, his small eyes wide, a combination of hope and anxiety reflecting back at me. This moment wasn't merely about punishment, it was about truth, about accountability, about finally confronting long-standing patterns that had been ignored for too long. My father subtly alluded to evidence, videos, witness accounts, past incidents, without naming a single one directly, but the implication was crystal clear. The tension in the room escalated palpably. My sister's attempts to deflect, to laugh, to regain composure, fell flat. I could feel a surge of hope, watching her carefully maintained facade start to crumble. At the same time, a knot of caution formed in my stomach. She might try to lash out, manipulate the situation further, or find a way to regain control. I realized this was no longer just about gifts. It was about protecting my son, asserting boundaries, and ensuring the truth finally came to light. Every glance, every subtle gesture, every movement in the room carried significance, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. Suddenly, my father motioned toward my phone on the table, and my heart skipped a beat. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my phone, the screen lighting up the tense shadows in the room. I began scrolling through the videos I had recorded during the party, each clip a vivid replay of my sister's deliberate destruction. Every tear of wrapping paper, every crushed toy, every smirk as she laughed at my son's confusion and hurt was captured on camera. I felt a mix of relief and resolve as I discreetly showed the footage to my father. He gave a subtle nod, his eyes confirming what I already knew. This wasn't perception or imagination. It was undeniable, documented proof. The room seemed to react to our quiet exchange. The tension thickened, and I could feel it pressing against the walls. My sister's attempts to deny reality became increasingly flimsy. I felt a surge of confidence course through me, knowing that I now had the leverage to protect my son and confront her with irrefutable evidence. The power of observation, preparation, and recording reality was clearer than ever. The proof validated my feelings, my instincts, and my desire to shield my child from humiliation. At the same time, I recognized the delicate balance I needed to maintain. Exposing truth could provoke backlash, so my next steps had to be precise, calculated, and unwavering. Every heartbeat seemed amplified, every glance in the room weighted with significance. My sister's eyes darted toward the phone, and I knew the moment of reckoning had arrived. Just as I was gathering the courage to confront my sister directly, she did something I hadn't expected. She tried to redirect blame, pointing a finger at someone else and claiming it wasn't her fault, insisting it was a prank gone wrong. My stomach dropped, and for a moment I froze, unsure if any family members might actually believe her. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my mind racing through every possible outcome. But before the lie could take root, my father calmly placed another phone on the table. On the screen, the footage showed her laughing while deliberately breaking the gifts, unprovoked, her joy at my son's distress undeniable. The twist hit me like a punch to the chest. Some family members had clearly been sympathetic to her, but the sheer clarity of the evidence shifted the balance instantly. I watched the energy in the room change. Whispers began, guilty glances were exchanged, and some guests quietly shifted to my side. Relief mingled with shock in my chest. I realized this confrontation was no longer about toys or birthdays. It was about accountability, perception, and the complicated dynamics that governed our family. Every tear on my son's face fueled a determination inside me that was impossible to ignore. I knew I had to act decisively to restore his joy and assert the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it became. The weight of this moment pressed down on me, heavy but necessary. My sister's face paled as she realized her story was unraveling completely. I knew it was time to take control of the situation. My voice stayed calm, steady, even as my heart raced. I looked directly at my sister and told her that she needed to apologize to my son, that any further disrespect would carry consequences far beyond today's party. The words felt strange coming out of me. They weren't about anger or revenge. They were about boundaries, about protecting my child, and about reclaiming some sense of order. I felt a quiet, powerful sense of empowerment wash over me. This was my moment to act with purpose. My father remained silent but stood nearby, his presence reassuring, a reminder that I wasn't facing this alone. I watched my sister hesitate, clearly weighing whether to comply or attempt another act of defiance. The guests held their breath, sensing a turning point in the room. I realized that staying composed, speaking with authority, and modeling resilience were not just strategies, they were essential for my son to witness and understand. Establishing this boundary gave me back a piece of control. The victory was subtle, but it was real, a first step toward restoring my son's dignity and joy. Slowly, the party atmosphere began to shift. The tension eased just enough for the focus to return to celebration, rather than humiliation. My sister's hands trembled as she finally faced my son, and I held my breath. The consequences of that moment unfolded faster than I could have anticipated. My sister's arrogance and smug confidence began to melt away, replaced by visible shame. Guests, who had previously hesitated or giggled, started to speak up, acknowledging what had actually happened. Support for my son was immediate and genuine, and the evidence on my phone lent undeniable weight to their words. My father, calm and composed, reminded everyone that trust and respect are earned, not taken or assumed, and his words seemed to settle the room like a quiet decree. The social balance shifted. Laughter faded into awkward silence, replaced by apologies, hesitant glances, and reflective expressions. My sister's attempts to regain control were futile, and I could see her reputation cracking in front of everyone. Meanwhile, my son's eyes brightened as he received gifts from friends and relatives. The ones that had been destroyed were replaced with care, love, and excitement, and I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice, accountability, and restoring what was rightfully his. Karma, subtle but certain, had made its presence known. Actions carry consequences, and those who mock or harm others are bound to face them. I realized that true strength lies in patience, observation, and moral courage, and that today's events had cemented lessons that neither my son nor I would ever forget. My sister quietly retreated to a corner, avoiding every eye in the room. I took a deep breath and approached my sister one last time. There was no yelling, no dramatic gestures, just steady eyes and a voice firm enough to command attention without raising it. Apologize to my son. He deserves that much, I said clearly, letting the words hang in the air. She hesitated, shifting from foot to foot, then muttered a weak, barely audible apology. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't heartfelt, but it was acknowledgement. I knew that this was as far as I could take it for today. My father, standing quietly nearby, gave me a subtle nod, a silent signal that he approved of the calm way I had handled the confrontation. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Tension faded, replaced by a sense of restored order. The party began to resume naturally. My son's laughter returned, brighter and freer than before, and I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me. I realized in that moment that resolution isn't about breaking someone down, it's about standing firm, protecting those you love, and ensuring accountability. My sister had learned a lesson, whether she fully admitted it or not, and the subtle dynamics of our family had adjusted. For the first time in a long while, I felt balance restored in our household. I glanced at my son's smiling face and knew today had changed everything. Looking back on the day, I realize it taught me far more than just handling family chaos. It was a profound lesson in protection, boundaries, and patience. My son's happiness mattered far more than my ego, my anger, or the temporary humiliation inflicted by others. I learned that documenting the truth, staying calm, and acting with integrity can transform even the most painful and embarrassing moments into opportunities for growth, justice, and understanding. My father's silent presence, the proof stored on my phone, and my own measured approach ensured that karma had a way of restoring balance. Family dynamics are messy, complicated, and often unpredictable, but the way we respond to challenges shapes outcomes far more than the actions themselves. Today, my son witnessed resilience, and I rediscovered my own courage. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever faced betrayal within your own family, and how did you handle it? Can patience, observation, and documented evidence turn the tide, or does real action demand direct confrontation? Share your experiences in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your stories and learn from them. The question lingers, what would you do if this happened in your family?